idioms of romance exist in both the light and the dark. When you push the dial towards the dark side, the romance becomes complex, interwoven with morally gray characters and situations. Physical and emotional violence exists at the margins, and sometimes right down in front. But as our panelists will discuss today, does this mean that dark romance is not for you? Perhaps at the end of that dark alley, you'll find something to entice you to take a taste. Today we welcome back the incomparable C.L. Cannon, as she offers the first indie connection of 2025, with books you may like if you're a fan of Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. The epilogue is back, with the panelists trying to root out my literary identity with 20 questions. Finally, we will preview some of the upcoming shows and events in the Go Indie Minute. Put the stiletto in your stocking. Make sure there's enough gas in the bike. And remember, it's all just business. As we get ready for the first This Week in Indies of 2025, with your host, SM Hillman.
Oh, okay. So we are on. Okay, good. Good Sunday, everybody. There's a little technical difficulty on our side, or on my side anyway, but the show can go on. So here we go. Welcome to This Week in Indies. I'm your host, SM Hillman. Today we talk about dark romance and why maybe it's not the evil blot of the romance genre as many believe. By the end of the day, if you're not a reader of dark romance already, we hope you might be convinced to give it a try. But before we do any of that, let's get deep into the before we get into the deep, I'm sorry, let me try that again. Before we get too deep into the kiss, kiss, bang, bang, let's go ahead and have our panelists introduce themselves. Yep, 2025 is really starting off well. Okay, so AJ?
Hi, I'm AJ. I write all kinds of romance, including dark romance. I've got paranormal romance, I've got contemporary romance, lots of romance, lots of smut, and I'm here to bring it all to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Lily?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lily Lucchesi, USA Today bestselling author. And as you can see, I am also S.L. Sinclair, which is my dark romance pen name. And I am also the founder and owner of Partners in Crime Book Services.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. SG?
Hi, I'm SG Tosh. I write romantic paranormal suspense. So not fully in the dark romance genre. So I'm here to learn as well.
Gotcha. Awesome. And Karina.
Hey everyone, I'm Karina Gantus, author of the Outlaw series, Dark Romance, and Broken Chains. I'm also the founder and owner of Author Assist, which is celebrating its 10-year anniversary.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for being here on the first Sunday in the 2025. Thanks everyone who is out there watching. We appreciate you being here. So first question I have, and I'll throw this out to AJ, and then we'll go, and then everybody else answer, of course. Here we go. If you're going to drop a few beats about what makes a story dark romance, what would they be? What is needed for it to be a dark romance?
Generally, the characters might be what we call morally gray or morally black, depending on how dark you're going. They maybe don't necessarily follow the high road all the time. There can be some death and murder and some torture and different dark aspects you don't necessarily find or consider romantic. Stalking, things like that. But it all works out to the happily ever after in the end, theoretically. So it all depends on how tough you are as far as following trigger warnings. Definitely read the trigger warnings if the author has them up for you. because dark romance definitely can have some triggering aspects.
Right, and so I know some people in this have very strong opinions about trigger warnings, but what is your take on the trigger warning? How
I
much
don't
do
have
you
a
put
lot of
in for yours?
yeah. I don't have a lot of triggers myself, so it's hard for me to identify trigger warnings. Uh, I keep a list on my website, people who want to find out. I have a general list, and then if you scroll down, you can see book by book what the trigger warnings are. That way, if you don't want to see any spoilers, you won't. But if you want to know the triggers, you can still look. Um, it's kind of a balancing act between spoiling what might happen in the book um, and keeping the reader safe, their mental health safe, because you definitely don't want someone reading something that's going to trigger them. Um, if you had the opportunity to say, hey, this is in the book. If you don't like this or if this sets you off, don't read it.
Right. Awesome. Lily, what about you? What are the beats for you that have to be in dark romance?
Well, I do want to bounce off of the trigger warning thing.
Sure.
I also use trigger warnings. I have a very big page in the beginning of my book, and if someone doesn't like trigger warnings, they don't want to read them, it warns them away, the first thing. So I don't want people to be like, oh, she uses trigger warnings, so I don't want to read it. You don't have to read them. Second, I also use them, and I've seen a couple other people say this too, as a tasting menu. You get to read those warnings, and is that what you're into? And that's another way that I like to use them, to be a more positive thing, because trigger warnings come with such negative connotations.
Yep.
A lot of dark romance authors are now trying to say, no, these are good. You want them in here because you want to know, do you want to read this book? Is this what you're into? Rather than, oh, this is a warning, you're not going to like it. This is a warning, you are going to like it. But one of the things that's very particular for me for a beat for dark romance is one of the main characters, whether you're writing, two or polycule, someone needs to be at very least morally gray, if not a villain. I've written a few where they're all pretty much morally gray, where they're all pitch black, and also when there's, a mix of it, or where the good character gets corrupted. I think that the characters themselves do need to have some level of darkness about themselves, also with what's going on, outside of it. But the number one thing is to get into the nitty gritty of the darkness of your characters themselves and have them help drive the story.
I'm having trouble with the mute button. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Do you, just real quick, do you use that tasting menu in your other writing, the non-dark romance?
Well, I don't typically need to for my Samantha Calcott romance books. Those are fairly trigger-free, but I do have some warnings for my urban fantasy books as Lily Lucchesi and my horror. But also, if you're going to read horror, I also feel like you should know, okay, there's going to be something in here that's going to be gross, bloody. I'm not going to like it. But I do have certain lists, like, yes, you are going to find violence, you're going to find torture. Yeah. So... But for urban fantasy, especially because it doesn't always have the torture and the darker things that I am into, I also, again, want to make sure that people know what they're getting.
Makes sense. Karina, how about you?
Okay,
what are the beats for you?
Mine, explicit, sexually explicit, and graphic violence. And the housewives absolutely love it. It is something that they really enjoy reading. The more intense it is, the better. All of my reviews for the book Broken Chains all say, be warned, triggers, but I couldn't put it down. Couldn't stop reading it. Really graphic, really explicit, but couldn't stop reading it. They all use the word trigger. I am one of those that is against writing trigger warnings in my book for the simple reason that the cover and the blurb should tell people what they are getting. And why should we, independent authors, have to write trigger warnings in our books when those that are top of the dark romance best-selling authors don't. So I'm very against trigger warnings, and I feel that the cover and the synopsis give it away what they're going to get. And of course, people always read reviews before they buy books. So with all the reviews saying trigger warning, be warned, then that gives it away as well. So there's always a bad guy. There's always your heroine. I put my main character through hell and back. Is there a happy ending? No. Well, I try and keep it as realistic as I can with my books, especially dark romance. So, going through all the crap that I put my character through, would they still be mentally stable? Would they still be able to find love? It is romance, but it's dark, so it has love in it, but it's the dark side of it. It's the violence. It's the turbulations that they go through, that we authors put them through. I absolutely loved writing every second of Broken Chains. It was hard, but I loved writing it, and like I said, the reviews have been excellent. I am writing the next one when I pick my pen up again. It's been a while, but I will be writing another dark romance. It's a genre that I can really get into and enjoy writing.
Awesome. So, collaboration, I mean, I know you do a lot of your own artwork and things like that, but collaboration with a cover artist is that something that you think is really important for dark romance to kind of convey what's going to happen in the book?
Yeah, I think the cover really needs to tell the reader what they're going to get. With the series, Outlaw series, I make sure, because they're a series, they need to look similar. So the text and the style is exactly the same. Again, you've got a motorbike, you've got a biker. It looks heavy. It looks like it's going to be rock and roll or something going on. Lawless Justice with the Kittens MC. They're badass women. Road Rage, you got two motorcycle clubs there. And with Broken Chains, there's a gun on the front. I don't know if Amazon is actually removing them now, because I know they're getting down onto covers. Certain things you can't have on your covers now, so I don't know how long it'll be until I'm told to remove that. The cover needs to give away the genre of the book and what the reader is going to get, and you work with your designer to get exactly what you want. And I'm thrilled. I mean, this one is translated in 5 languages, so it's exactly the same cover but with a different title, and it's they were able to do that for me, which was amazing, to be able to change the titles for the Russian, the Greek, Italian, French, and Portuguese copy. But again, keep the cover as it is. It shows exactly what the reader's going to get.
Awesome. Thank you much. SG? What about you? Trigger warnings and beats and all the good things.
You're muted.
It would help if I unmute, yeah. So going off of the cover, since mine looks significantly different from everybody else on here, that's kind of to be expected because mine is not dark romance primarily. It is paranormal mystery, paranormal suspense, with a sort of strong romantic component to it. And the characters, kind of going off of some of the I would say I've pulled some elements of dark romance into this series. For example, both of the main characters are morally gray. She is a full-on assassin. The first few chapters, she's killing someone in the first book. And he is a dark wizard who works for a shady government organization that's had to do pretty dark things in his line of work. And the other thing I was going to say is, I think explicit sex and violence goes with the territory of dark romance. But for me, both when I'm writing this sort of, let's say, kind of light dark thing, and when I'm reading whatever I'm reading, even if it's super dark, the psychological component is really important for me too. The power dynamic, whichever way it goes. I like to see a struggle of the main characters kind of vying for that power over each other. Or there might be just a really strong differential from the beginning and it doesn't change, or it changes, swings fully over the course of the book. That's what I like to see in whatever way that kind of manifests itself. Now, as far as trigger warnings, I also don't have a lot of triggers, so I honestly have never really paid a lot of attention to them, and my books don't require them. So my thought is kind of, I like the tasting menu idea. I think that is sort of where the readership is moving, is not so much this is why you don't want to read it, but like there's a lot of choices out there. Maybe this is why you do want to read it. And from a writer's perspective, that can be used, you can call them triggers, you can call them tropes at this point, and that's good for marketing too. It's good to know what's in your book. So I don't know necessarily if they need to be included in the first page. I also know at one point, and maybe still, Amazon was kind of throttling pages that had trigger warnings on them. On the sales page, I think you guys would know better than I would. So that's another kind of consideration when you include a list of bad things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, readers, in theory, readers should know what they're getting into just based on the blurbs and things like that. But I know that can be the trigger warnings and everything can be very tricky in that regard. So real quick, we'll look over some of our comments from the audience. AF Stewart saying hi. Hi, AF. Someone else, Misa Lukaful. Sorry, I mispronounced that. Hi, how you doing? Heather, hello, gotcha. Vanessa, there we go. Yes, words are hard. Apparently today words are hard for me. So Eva, there we go. Happy anniversary. Yep, absolutely. Tanya says meow, meow. Tiff, hello. Yeah, there's a little bit of typing in the background. Yep. Karina saying, breaking the fourth wall, saying hi to people. Vampire enthusiast, thank you very much.
Right.
Everybody loves Enthralled. Hello, hi. We can do what we want without regard to what others do. Okay. I like content warnings over trigger warnings as a term, much like movies and TV offer content options. Yeah, that's a good point. Vanessa, for content warnings rather than trigger warnings, also like using a web page and directing readers from if they want. Yep, web pages I think are still useful in 2025. Mango, hello. Eva, I went into a dark fantasy without knowing it was a dark until a mutilation. I went to the dark. I shouldn't laugh at that, I guess. Fantasy without realizing until a child death, right? Covers are important. Yep, that's true. Covers are very important. Yeah. Gotcha. Yep. More about the triggers. And gotcha. Oh, and adding, very good, Eva. Thank you so much adding those to your list. All right, let's go ahead and move on. And this time we'll start with SG. Second question I have is, and this is a little bit different for you, I understand, but why, in your case, why add dark elements? For everyone else, why dark romance? What was it about it that appealed to you as a reader and a writer? And then, do you remember the first brush with dark romance? SG, go ahead.
So I've just always kind of liked dark stuff. I come from a more of a dark sci-fi horror history. This latest series of mine is my latest, and it's the first one to have any sort of romantic element into it. So theoretically, my trajectory might be leading me even darker as we continue. I do have an idea about a dark romance, but we'll see. And yeah, I think it's just natural for me. It's not something I've ever had to really think about. Just always something I've been interested in. And I'm sorry, what was the second part?
Well, what was your first brush with dark romance? What was the thing that kind of got you? My question was seduced. What seduced you to the dark side?
It's been so long. Can't remember. Probably, I mean, I'm sure it happened somewhere in college. It was likely a movie prior to a book. The first thing I thought of, and this is probably, I could probably trace it to something else, but this is just the thing that's in my head, so I'm gonna go with it, was the movie Secretary, which isn't like super dark, but it's got that kind of psychological power dynamic thing. Right. That happens. So that was kind of, and that was, I was 18, 19 years old at the time. So that made an impression, and I think it just kind of went from there.
Gotcha. Yeah. It brings to mind that there's a relationship between kink and dark romance that I think that isn't always talked about. Because it's still
too.
Right. Yeah, it's very much a case where people are still nervous to talk about kink publicly, except in certain spaces, right? Right, you, Karina, what made you want to go write dark romance?
What took me to the dark side? Well, my first book, In Times of Violence, was a bit like The Outsiders of 2000 and whenever I wrote it. It was a young adult. I didn't think I was going to write another one, but the fans wanted a sequel. So then I did a sequel. And moving on from doing that, it then went a little bit darker, a little more violent. And through the books, I mean, Road Rage, which is the last one, this is the most explicit and graphic book in that series. It seemed to go down the line and just get more and more heavier, deeper, darker as I wrote the books. I think it's knowledge, experience, reading other books, of course, watching the film. Secretary was a good one. 365 is another good one if you haven't watched it yet. It's a trilogy. It was. I don't have a problem writing about kink, about BDSM. It is mainstream now. Maybe okay, they keep it quiet in the bedroom, but I think a lot of couples have a lot of kink in their relationship. So reading about it, I don't think is a problem because it's a normal thing nowadays, in my humble opinion. So with Broken Chains, that was the most graphic and explicit book that I've written until I did adult version of In Times of Violence. I'm actually going to tone it down. It is so dark and graphic. that I am actually going to rewrite the first draft and tone it down. So that's a big thing for me, to actually go and make it a little bit softer.
Gotcha. Lily, what about you? What brought you to dark romance?
One could say that even in my urban fantasy, there's dark romance. The main characters are a human cop who thinks that he's a hero when really he's not, and the most morally gray vampire special agent you could find. They're constantly threatening to kill each other, and it can be described as a little bit toxic. But I started slowly beginning with BDSM romance. As Samantha Calcott, I have a novel called Her Secret Master, another one called Perfect Disaster, and then I have Lie to Me, as well as some other assorted novellas. And I started doing that because I was personally unhappy with how BDSM was being portrayed in romantic books that were popular at the time. You can read between the lines there. So I wanted it shown, yes, it's healthy. Yes, it's fun. Yes, it's normal. And I started doing this back in 2018. So it's been almost 7 years now. And then I finally created the S.L. Sinclair pen name because I had stories. My first one was Beyond Her Duties, which is it's basically a straight smut novella, and that was just kind of dip my toe in. But The Family Farm and its 2 sequels, this story was in my head since I was about 16 years old. And I always wanted to write it. And I was so afraid because I remember when the whole Kay Webster drama happened with her book Wild. And there were some people I was working with at the time who went on rampages about how evil and disgusting you were if you read or wrote anything like this stuff. So I'm just like, okay, I guess I'm never going to release that if that's, how it's being received. And finally, I was just like, you know what? This story won't go away. I need an outlet for these darker proclivities. So I made it. And as for what got me into dark romance, clearly the book is not a romance, but I got my first copy of Dracula when I was 8 years old after begging my mom for it. And she's like, as long as you can understand what's in there, that's fine, like the language. And I didn't understand why Mina was enthralled by Dracula and she was, close to turning into a vampire, yet she chose Jonathan Harker. And then, as I got older and I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it's like, no, choose the villain. Choose that dark, evil man who will destroy the world for you. And so that's where I started. I blame Count Dracula.
The poor Count gets blamed for a lot of things, that's for sure. AJ, what about you? What got you into dark romance?
I started writing it because it started gaining popularity, and I saw a chance to write something that I enjoyed reading. But I don't know what really got me into it. There's not one defining moment. I just always had some kind of dark fantasies, and it's kind of fun to dive into those. And Call Me Bunny here is really dark. Bunny is a sociopath and has no problems killing if they do her wrong or if she's bored. But it's just something that you get the chance to through writing or reading it, visit these dark fantasies and kind of live them through the words without having to actually go out and murder people. So I think it's kind of fun to be able to live a dark on the edge, so to speak, without having to actually go out and do the thing. Although I will say one thing, explicit romance does not have to be dark. Micah's Girls is very explicit, but it is not a dark book at all. So that's one thing I had a little issue with in the conversation earlier, because explicit romance, you can have explicit and still be fluffy. But dark romance definitely tends to be on the more explicit side than the fluffy stuff does, from what I've seen. So, but yeah, it takes all kinds, dark and light, and I like being able to show behind the closed doors, regardless of what brightness I'm writing in.
Gotcha. Makes sense. This is something I'll just throw out real quick for everybody. You can just jump in if you want. I've heard the term power dynamics, and obviously in kink and BDSM, power dynamics are something that is part of that particular lifestyle. Is a power dynamic of some kind important for dark romance, or is it just like icing on that particular cake?
It's not
I think it definitely
necessary.
adds.
Sorry.
I don't think it's necessary. No, sorry. I agree that it's not necessarily necessary, but it does give extra flavor, I would say. I like reading the power dynamics that's common in BDSM and kink uh, scenes. I like I like reading and exploring those dynamics, but I don't think it's necessary for dark romance. But it definitely does add some flavor and depth to it sometimes.
Yeah, it doesn't need it whatsoever, but it does. It is just an element. It's a trope that you can use, or power dynamics. You could very easily have couples or polycules who are all equally on the same footing, yet something else brings it into the dark elements. There are so many things that can make a book dark that are in power dynamics. Again, I've written non-dark romances that have power dynamics. Again, BDSM in and of itself is not dark. It's just normal. So power exchange and power dynamics are just another trope and another flavoring you can throw in. Like, again, the family firm, it starts out where there is definitely a power imbalance because of who my character is with and the fact that she's also going to be working with them, not only also knowing them since she was 5. But it shifts as you read the series, and it becomes where she has this power because she exists. It's not a very typical power dynamic. I have another book called Acts of Contrition, which I don't have here. I don't have the new paperback with its pretty cover, but it's very much a power dynamic, and it very much is basically what the story is one of the role play scenes you can have in a BDSM relationship written out as a novel. And so that's basically what I wanted to do and what I wanted to have it as. It's a fantasy. It's not something any of us are striving for. No one wants to get kidnapped and held by a cult in real life and be whipped and flogged. Like, that's not. But in a BDSM role play scene, clearly, yes, many of us would. And so that's what that book sort of came about. So no, power dynamics, not necessary. Very, very hot and welcomed.
Right, for sure. Karina, SG? I think you're muted, Karina.
There we go. Broken Chains is about mafia. So you're talking Doms here, they have the power. They're going to assume that power. In Broken Chains, you have the Dom, who is a typical Dom, where he knows how to treat his submissive. He knows that they're in charge, that they have the power in the end, that aftercare is important, and blah blah blah. But then you have the Russian Dom, I'm getting mixed up now. The Russian Don, who is also a Dom, but he's the bad kind. He is abusive. He doesn't listen to limits or boundaries. He does basically what he wants. He has the power, he uses it. So in that book, you've got both sides of the power dynamic, the good and the bad.
Gotcha. SG?
I mean, I'm already on record as saying I personally like it. Now, I'm going to defer to you guys on whether or not you need it, because you are the dark romance writers. And so if you say it's not necessary, I'll believe you. I just think that if you really look at any, like even non-romance, I think power dynamics are always present. And they do, even if they're subtle, I think they do tend to make the story more interesting, definitely.
Excellent. All right. Comments? Karina thanking Eva. Yep, thank you, Eva, for your comments and your. And Tanya, Lily, Tanya's working on a Dracula retelling that answers those questions. Sounds
very nice. Actually, I wrote a sequel, quote unquote, to Dracula featuring Dracula's daughter and Renfield's descendant, kind of righting those wrongs. Like, no, you choose the sexy vampire. You choose her.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's take a moment here and I'm very happy to say that this, our first Indie Connection of 2025, CL Cannon is back. So let's take a listen. That is the wrong thing. We're not. Here we go.
Hey guys, CO Kitten here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. And today I'm going to be telling you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Heartless Hunter, or as the version that I have, which is the original version, The Crimson Moth by Kristen Ciccarelli. This beautiful Fairy Loot edition. Love it. It's a great enemies to lovers romance book. So let's get into some indie picks. The first book I have for you is called Given by Elena R. Galea. She's born to die. He lives to hunt. Ren was born bearing a mark on her forehead. She's always known she would be given to serve the gods in her 20th year, and she's eager to work for them since they keep the kingdom safe. That is until she sneaks into a giving ceremony and watches as her best friend is slaughtered in the name of the gods. Horrified, Ren escapes her village under the cover of darkness. Her plan is simple: flee the kingdom and stay alive. Surviving is going well until she stumbles upon an injured, unconscious man in the woods. Unwilling to leave him to die, she heals him. Only when he wakes, she realizes he's a hunter, and his prey? Her. Now he's in her debt, inexplicably drawn to her and caught in a moral quandary. He gives her a gift, one day's head start. Marked ones must be returned to the gods. It's the law, and when the hunter catches her, she'll do whatever it takes to get away. The second book I have for you is called Reign of Night by Sarah C. Rothley. Hunters of the Helios Order have a single mission: track vampires and kill them. Lysandra lived her life by this purpose, until the day a vampire saved her from certain death. Now she is unwillingly bonded to him, a secret that will see her executed if her order learns the truth. When she finds Asher, she'll cut out his heart for tying her to him, even if it kills her too. But when a young girl is found dead, Lysandra's mission is derailed. In the gaping hole where the girl's heart once was, lies a single red rose. Lysandra has seen the signature before, left by the vampire who took her uncle's life. Karpov is one of the ancients, and his death is the only one Lysandra wants more than Asher's. Unfortunately, Karpov is also the only being, dead or undead, who holds the key to Asher's whereabouts. If Lysandra ever wants to find him, she'll have to work with her uncle's murderer. Asher's death could finally bring her peace, but can she accept it when it means leaving her uncle's killer alive? Or will she fall into her master's waiting arms, unable to fight the pull of the unbreakable bond between them? The third book I have for you is called Those We Couldn't Burn by Whitney L. Spradling. Worlds collide when an ancient vision brings a witch and a witch hunter together. Prince Tiberius Berkshire, witch hunter extraordinaire, has been set with an impossible task: discover the truth of an ancient vision to keep his family on the throne. His world crashes down around him when an intricate piece of the vision's puzzle falls into place in the form of a purple-haired witch. Neve Parker has spent the past 10 years quietly taking revenge against the witch hunters, until the Prince of the Hunters captures her. Taken to the palace, she's given the choice to either work for the enemy or burn at the stake. Together they set out to discover the truth, but difficulties lie ahead as they fight attraction and animosity. When they uncover more than they bargained for, the likely duo must determine what is more important to them, their beliefs or their hearts. And the last book I have for you is called The Inkwater Witch by Atlee Weeks. Pain provides clarity. Suffering builds strength. Mercy is a weakness. Mardella believes the lessons etched into her skin and memory would prevent her from ever being captive to another again. She is wrong. After a disastrous encounter in her enchanted swamp, she finds herself in chains and her magic bound at the feet of her enemy. The gorgeous and imposing Fae General demands she release his people from her curse, or he'll happily kill her for her past crimes. The only thing is, she isn't the one poisoning the Fae. Rorik doesn't trust the witch or her denials. Her beauty is as diabolical as the pernicious flowers that adorn her home. The darkness poisoning his people originates from her cursed swamp, and he'll keep her close as he forces her to guide him through her treacherous waters. Once the curse is removed, he'll rid the world of the dangerous creature, even if his twin soul whispers that the fearsome witch is his mate. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
Thank you, CL. That was awesome. Glad to see you back, and we appreciate the Indie Connections. All right, so I'm just going to throw this one out to everyone. So speak up if you have thoughts. How far is too far, if such a thing exists? And when does it become not romance? Because romance, there are important tropes and idioms for romance as well. But so how far is too far? When does it just slide into gratuitous whatever?
That's
I
kind
have
of
a
a
thing of how
yeah.
far, and I crossed it once and I didn't like it. I crossed it in, so people know this is the one trigger I fully believe in, and that's if there's any sort of animal abuse, and that would be very briefly in Call Me Danger, where 2 dogs get killed as a warning. That's actually my line. Well, I have 2 lines, but that's the first one would be animal abuse for any sort of, oh yeah, this is how dark this character is, and it's not the heroes doing it. And the second one would be actual titillation of child abuse. Some of my characters, the main character in Acts of Contrition, she is abused as a child and sex trafficked. And I make it very clear that is not supposed to be one of the hot things. And I think that if you do make it, that is the main plot, that's when you go from dark romance into psychological horror. That actually goes into psychological horror territory because it's not for titillation, it's just for shock value.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is when it's done not as part of the plot or as part of the character's normal actions. It's just there for gratuity and for let's make this dark. In Call Me Bundy, like I said, she's a sociopath. She finds this guy who turned her into the mob, so to speak, and she kidnaps him and gets rid of him unintentionally, but she has no qualms about it. But that's because Bunny just doesn't, she doesn't have that conscience that sits there and says, no, you shouldn't drag a guy in a sack down, 3 flights of stairs to kidnap him. That's not something you should do. So, her mind doesn't see that as wrong. She's just trying to right the wrong he did to her. And if he gets hurt in the meantime, so be it. But it's not necessarily gratuitous. That's just how Bunny is. She doesn't have that internal, no, don't do this in her head.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I've been in this situation, as I said before, that the first draft of In Times of Violence has gone a little bit too much, in my opinion. I'm not sure what I'm going to take out, but there's a kidnapping of the main character, and she's sold as a sex slave in a club. I think she's there for about 2 years before she's rescued. Mentally, she's in a mess, and the 2 bikers, because it's a biker gang that rescued her, the 2 bikers decide to regress her and go into age play to help her to cope with all of the stuff that she's been through. This gets into another form of BDS that people probably don't know of. So if you're going to write about something like that, you've got to really explain it so it makes sense and not just this is what happened that day or whatever. It really needs to be explained of why they did it and why it's helping her. With Broken Chains, it actually she's actually forced to eat off the floor like a pet. Again, another pet play, another form of BDSM that people don't know of. So I think for me, going too far is talking about something that people won't know of. But if you do that, you need to really, really explain it so they understand it. But I think any form of abuse is too far for dark romance. However, it's the abuse that makes it juicy. It's the abuse that people like reading about. It's why dark romance is so popular and such a not just for people writing it, but for people reading it. It's such a popular genre because they can read this character going through hell and back, and then they can close the book. It's not them. They didn't live it. And they find that fascinating, and they love that, like I said, especially the housewives. But yeah, any kind of abuse, mental, physical, child, animal, is going into the dark realm. Lose my voice, sorry. Into the dark realm, and can, depending on how you deal with it, be too much for some people, and even too much for the writer.
SG?
So I agree with the abuse to children, abuse to animals. That's, that's all beyond probably what should be covered in dark romance. Mine is actually a question, if I could, if that's
yeah,
okay.
please.
Since, like I said, I'm here to learn too. I'm wondering how important. So, I know just from being a writer that one of the requirements, take that how you will, of the romance genre is you have to have a happily ever after. Is that still true in dark romance? Just for my very uneducated opinion, it seems like a happy ending might be even more important. Maybe not to get having them be together, but a happy ending for the main character would be more important the darker you get, or is that not accurate? I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on the happily ever after of it all.
I'm going to speak from marketing and editing as opposed to just writing. If you go in, you will actually see in dark romance reader groups, readers are now asking for dark romances that don't have an HEA. Really? They want to cry. They want an extra layer of darkness. They don't even want the characters to be happy. But no HEA could also be an HEA for some books. If you're not looking at dark, there are so many different ways to write it. But no, an HEA is not required. I know that in other forms of romance, yes, an HEA is required. But for dark, sometimes at the end, the girl is just going to be locked up in her cage, which again, that's also another BDSM dynamic, master-slave, cage play. Mm-hmm. And that may be the ending. But if you look at it again as this is a BDSM fantasy, this is a role play, that is a happy ending. But it's not a typical happy ending. But no, dark romance is very, very open where you can still have the romance, but it's just not a happy romance. And it's a very fine line to walk. It's something I believe that you need to work at. I still actually have not written one of those. That's my goal, is to try and do that at some point. But
it's intense.
It is. It's going to be very intense. I've edited quite a few. And honestly, my clients just absolutely amaze me.
Yeah, that feels like it'd be tough.
Yeah, I think dark romance is starting to blur the definition of romance, because it used to be the definition of romance was there is a happily ever after. And now people are asking for romance without it and writing romance without it. And I think that definition is getting muddled and blurred because it's getting written the way people want it. Some people want to cry. They want to have their heart ripped out and stomped on. And, that's not my deal, but some people like that. So, it's getting a lot more muddied as far as defining romance, especially with the darker parts of the genre.
With my books, there's no happy ever after. It's happy for now. So the character's in a situation where she can't do anything about her happy ever after, but she'll accept where she is and take what she's got. So the reader can then decide what's going to happen. Is it going to work out for her later on? Where she is at the end of the book, it's a final. Yes, that this is where it finishes, but who knows what's going to happen in the future? So happy for now is mine.
Okay.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you, SG, for asking that question. For our last question, Vanessa was, I wonder if the popularity of dark romance can also tie into the idea of taking back control in relation situations in which we are real life, who, often we don't have control. Absolutely. I think that's probably true. Our Go Indie Now robot has an opinion. Is going to say depends on the ending is for. What is happy for those who have crossed over into the dark realm. There's no way a reader can view it's the same unless they relate. That's true. That's a good point. Right. It's all about the readers, right? If they can relate to a particular story, then that's a good thing.
And I have to add to what Vanessa said. That's actually part of the reason I had wanted to have a panel like this, because a lot of people who read it, not as many who write it, but some, of course, who write it as well, but many who read dark romance, they read it to help heal from situations in real life that have traumatized them. Many people also who participate in BDSM do it for the same way. It's reclaiming your control, especially as a submissive. It reclaims your control. And that's very normal and it's very healthy. But the other side of it that I also wanted to mention is there are some people, and I have to be thankful I'm one of them, whose trauma is not severe, it might be a little bit of something like a coercion. It's things that still fall into the realm of a trauma, but it's not severe. Whereas I've always been interested in stuff like this even before that. And I also want to say, because this is a very prevalent thing in normal society, what's normal, is that there's something wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you if you just enjoy this stuff. There is nothing wrong with you. And it is in a world where we do not have a lot of control, especially if you're female presenting, trans female, you don't have a lot of control, especially right now, especially in America. And there are quite a few other countries as well. This is giving you that control. This is giving you, yes, I am choosing this. And it's very, very, very important. And dark romance is so important for people's psychological welfare.
I totally agree with you, Lily, on that. The thing about the main characters in our books is they are so strong. We put them through hell and back, but they are so strong. They have the power, they have the strength, and a reader reading that will give them that no matter what they're going through, they can get through it. That you have that power. And I think having a weak character wouldn't make it realistic, you know? Someone who just gives up and I mean, it's not entertaining anyway for a main character to give up. They fight through everything, and they're strong. They're strong-willed, mentally strong, physically strong. They may get torn down, but they will build themselves back up, and that's what the reader needs to read to heal.
Gotcha. Awesome. One last question before we get to the epilogue. And you can throw this out there real quick. We always try to give some advice to the new writer, someone who's new to dark romance, going to write it. Like SG, SG has been learning this entire time. So what's a piece of advice you'd throw out to the new someone who's going to write dark romance? And should you start with dark? I mean, start wherever you like in your writing career, but should someone start with dark romance?
I think if you've read enough of it, you can start writing it, but you have to know the beats and the tropes, and you can't just throw any old kind of weirdness in to make it dark. You've got to know what the readers are reading and what they're looking for and what they're wanting to read before you can just dive in. I wouldn't dive into dark romance if I haven't read or watched movies with dark romantic aspects. Because otherwise you don't know what the readers are wanting. You have to see what's being read to know what to write. Not to say to copy it, but to say find the tropes and the beats that they're looking for, so that you have an idea of, okay, this is what the readers want. Now I know what I can dive into.
With a new writer diving into dark romance, they need to read as many books out there as there is, and as AJ said, to watch all of those movies. I wouldn't for the first book go too dark. I would, because it's gonna, and it will ruffle feathers of your readers, even if you warn them about it. Just bring it in subtly, especially if it's like a sequel. Bring it in subtly, and as you grow with the books, then it can get more darker. But yeah, read as many books as you can, so you know what people are reading, you know how it works, you know what's too much, what's acceptable. Yeah, definitely research.
Yeah, and I also want to speak as an editor, and again, what both AJ and Karina said, of course, is correct. Read, read, read. Read the genre. Read everything that you can. Yes, watch the films too, but the difference between reading it and watching the films is the films, you're very visual, and with reading, you're processing extra information that a film can't give you. So I think you really do have to do both. You want that visual in your head, especially if you're someone who, when you're reading or writing, you don't see things in your head. You definitely want to watch something. But again, yes, read it and decide if you like it. Like, don't just say, oh, this sounds good, let me try it. No, you must read and research. And this piece of advice I'm going to give as an author: don't be scared. There's writing my last Santini family book, The Family Fortune, writing the first draft and the second draft after my first draft got lost. And then, oh God. But doing that, I have a scene in there that I left out of the first draft. And it has to do with the main character's little half-sister getting kidnapped along with her, because they want the main character for ransom for her inheritance that she wound up getting, that she didn't know about. And I'd left the scene out at first because I was very scared. It was crossing a bit of a line, some of the things that happened to them. And but then during the second draft, I'm like, I'm going to put this in. I'm changing the chapter. I'm putting it back to what I originally wanted. And the readers love it. So don't be scared. If you're sitting there concerned, what if they don't like it? What if, then they're not your readers. Your readers are going to love it. So be as depraved as you want to be, and as depraved as the story needs to be. Sometimes the story is going to take you to places you're not comfortable with, but that's how you grow as a writer. So don't be afraid.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. Any other advice? Any other thoughts?
I can, again, this is more of a question, but I imagine that, I mean, every genre and every type of book, you're going to want a beta reader or a first alpha reader or editor or whatever to go through it with you. This feels like it's really, really important to find the right one, someone who knows the genre and someone you can, like, you trust with this kind of thing. That feels important too.
Yeah.
As an editor, yeah. And shameless self-plug. If you write dark romance, Partners in Crime Book Services is taking clients. So I'm sorry. We are, but I'm sorry. But yes, you do need an editor who is not afraid and who knows the genre. This is not something that you can, if you have a longtime editor that you trust who's always been working with you, but they don't know dark romance, this is not a time when you say, well, I need to be loyal and we can learn together. No, you need someone who knows the genre. And I would say the same thing for any genre that you're trying. If you, have always written dark romance or rom-coms and you want to try fantasy, then you need a new editor who knows fantasy. Many editors know multiple genres and are comfortable with them. I'm one of them. Some specialize. So you need to talk to your editor. What do you specialize in? And if you don't, who do you recommend? Because we know everybody. We know other people.
My beta reader had never read dark romance. I did give them the heads up of how graphic and explicit it was. They loved it and probably start reading it more often. But it definitely triggered them. But she actually said that she wouldn't take the triggers out. She liked the triggers because it gives it more juice and more entertainment or whatever. But yeah, I made the mistake of having a beta reader who'd never read dark romance, but it worked out for me. But I agree with Lily that someone who reads the book, ARC readers, beta readers, editors, they need to know that genre and they need to be okay reading it, because the last thing you want to do is trigger someone.
For sure, absolutely. All right, let's get a few of our last comments. Vanessa was leaving. Yes, they are all awesome. It was a great discussion. But then Vanessa wasn't leaving. Okay, she's back. Awesome. Yep, well said, Lily. That was very good. That was very on point. And Vanessa, I think "Don't be afraid" is great general advice for writers too. Yeah, that is good general advice, but I think in this case that is absolutely true. All right, so let's go ahead and play 20 questions. Oh, hold on. Where's the epilogue thing? Here we go. It's time for 20 questions. Hopefully I'll have a cool thing for that next time. But anyway, so we're changing things up a little bit this time around. We're not looking for a particular character. We're actually looking for an author. So let's see how it goes for the first 20 questions. So remember, it's a yes or no, 20 yes or no questions. The first 4, I'll go down the line, starting with AJ. You guys will each get 1 question. And then after that, there's 16 more questions to go to discover who this author is. So, AJ, please start us off.
Is the author male?
No.
Is the author alive?
No.
Does the author write fantasy?
Yeah. Of a sort.
Is the author American?
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right. So 16 questions to go. Anybody can ask one.
Was the author very young when she published for the first time? Notably young.
Let me check that out. Actually, I don't think so, but let me double check that. It's a good question.
Is she a children's book author?
I'll answer that in just 1 second. No, not notably young, and no, I'm not aware that this author wrote children's books.
I think I know who might be.
I'm just going to throw my guess out there. I know I can't guess again. Is it Anne Rice?
It is Anne Rice.
Oh, I had Mary Shelley.
I thought it was Mary Shelley. That's why I asked about the age, because she was notably young.
My next question was going to be, does it involve vampires?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I'm like, you know what? I just think it's her. Screw it.
That was quick.
That was
quick.
Last time it took more than 20 questions when I was on.
I know. Yep. So
authors are probably easier because you don't have to be like, are they human? Are they whatever? Like,
right. No, we'll have. But yeah, I also wanted to make sure we had someone who was at least somewhat tangentially related to the topic, right?
Yes, so. She was great for getting dark romance into the modern day libraries.
Yep. Awesome. All right. So, well, that was quick. All right, let's go ahead and have our Go. Is that what I'm calling it? Yeah. The Go Indie Minute. All right. So, Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. These are all Eastern times. We have 21 Grams with Wayne Termel. Tuesday at 8, Spotlight 2025 series Versus Holmes and the Star's Edge book series. Friday at 9 p.m., we have Words That Kill, Season 3, Episode 8. Roe Morgan killing off reader favorites. That should be a good one. And next Sunday at noon, of course, we have the This Week in Indies with Joe Compton. Creative activities. How to find your creative energy in many different directions. So, starting... Let me get rid of my face because nobody wants to see that. Starting with SG, go ahead and... Oh, AJ's back.
Yep, sorry.
That's okay.
I ruined it.
And now that's okay. No problem. All right. Starting with SG, go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you on the internet, please.
Yeah, so the easiest place to find all my stuff is my website, sgtosh.com. It's right down here. There it is, kind of. You can find links to my books, links to my social media. I am mostly on Instagram and Facebook and a little bit on TikTok, I guess. I have 2 series right now, The Death by Misadventure, paranormal suspense with a little bit of romantic element in it. And the Dead Mall series, which is paranormal action adventure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Karina?
So if you, after dark romance, type into Google Dirty Streets Press, which is my title for my the people that sell the book. Also, those authors that are out there that want to dive into dark romance or even have a book and it's not published yet, come and find me, Author Assist Limited. Again, just type it into Google and you'll find my website. And let's chat.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Karina. Lily?
Thank you again for going to Go Indie Now for having me. I am Lily Lucchesi. I also write as SL Sinclair with my dark romance. If you want to find my dark romance, I am SL Sinclair and Serena Sinclair on Facebook and Read SL Sinclair on Instagram. You can also find Lily Lucchesi under that name on Blue Sky, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can also find Partners in Crime Book Services on TikTok and on Substack. And on Substack, we also give some interesting writing tips and editing tips for authors, as well as promote my pen names and all of the clients as well. So please come and see all of the amazing authors that we have to offer. Many are dark romance, so you'll surely find something that will tempt you to the dark side if you haven't been already.
Thanks so much. AJ?
Hi, AJ Mulligan. You can find me at ajmulligan.com/author. Gets me all the links. ajmulligan.com/triggers for those trigger warnings. And I'll see you around here.
I want to thank all of you. You were all great. It was a great discussion to start off 2025. Everyone brought their A game today for sure. Last comment from Enthralled. Still haven't read a single Anne Rice book. But I got one in my bookshelf waiting for me to finish my current reads. Yep, highly recommend reading Anne Rice. So, thanks everyone who stopped in to listen, to watch. We appreciate all of you. And remember, it's always time to go indie now. Bye, everybody.